welcome to Gowanus Mirror. Today we get to interview Johnny Thornton, who is the Executive Director of ARTS Gowanus. Hi, Johnny.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
Oh, we're so thrilled to get to talk to you. So let's start with a little introduction. Please tell us about yourself, where you're from, where you live now, and what your background is.
My name is Johnny Thornton. I'm the Executive Director of ARTS Gowanus. We are a community-based arts organization in the neighborhood. I am also an artist in the neighborhood. I've been an artist in the neighborhood for about 7 years, and I also run Established Gallery, which is a gallery a little outside of Gowanus in Prospect Heights. I grew up in South Africa and Tucson, Arizona, and I've been in New York for, 13 years now?
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about just a glimpse of what that journey was to bring you from South Africa to Arizona to New York. Do you have the short version?
Sure. My father is a mining engineer, so from about 6 to 13 I lived in South Africa, Johannesburg, and after that we moved to Tucson, Arizona. And I always had a lot of family in Brooklyn, and I always wanted to come here, so the second I could, I came here for grad school in 2010.
Beautiful. And as an artist, I'd love to have you talk about what does your work aim to say?
My work sort of varies greatly depending on what series I'm working on. I started as a photorealist painter, and I was pretty practiced in that. I started when I was in my 20s, and I became a photorealist painter. And in my late 20s, I got very ill. I had a kidney disease, and I was no longer able to paint the way I used to. And I had long stints in hospital beds and things like that. I had shaky hands for a long time, and so that sort of served my practice and pushed it in kind of another direction. And now that I'm 7 years out of my transplant, I've sort of come back into both of them. So that's my main practice, portraiture and sort of expressionist line work, but I also do immersive installations. I do a lot of photography. I'm kind of crazy all over the place in terms of what I'm doing in studio work.
That's really, really fascinating. It's always so like our journeys as humans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my whatever art practice I'm doing at the time is sort of dictated by what's happening in my life, how much time I have to commit to it, and what I'm interested in saying or talking about at that point. So
right.
it kind of is an ever-evolving process.
And in terms of what you're working on now, what do you find yourself trying to say?
During COVID, I sort of started thinking a lot about sort of collective experiences, and I've started editing photographs. I'm finding photographs, the vintage photographs that I don't know the people, and sort of thinking about collective memory and how we're going to think about this experience a generation later. And so I've started sort of playing around with these ideas of what collective memory is, on a mass scale that this is going to be.
Beautiful. Who are your biggest influences?
It's funny, when I was young, I did the art history, very Western, it's like, I'm very into Alice Neal. I was really influenced by Chuck Close when I was younger. When I was a photorealist, it was all about portraiture. I was very into portraiture. But these days, I feel like I'm very disconnected from the art world at large. All of my influences are kind of people I know in the neighborhood. My favorite artists I get to work with on an active basis all the time. And I think there's so many amazing artists in the neighborhood. And I feel like when you work with artists and you have this sort of collective conversation, that's what influences me. And, and not just in terms of art practice, but also in my community work with Arts Gowanus. I sort of get swayed and, I sort of move with the people that I'm sort of collectively working with. And I think that in life and art and all these things, that sort of, I'm always fed by the creativity around me.
Yeah, it's like community as art salon.
Yeah.
Thinking about your history, how have you developed your career? Can you talk a little more about that
Sure.
journey?
I think a lot of my career has kind of happened serendipitously. When I was in Tucson, Arizona, I ran sort of like a small gallery / venue. It was very DIY, very punk rock, very fun. And when I came out here, I was sick, and I was I was in bed for long stretches of time. So I was just sort of like not able to do anything. And so the second I was healthy again and able to do things, I just sort of was trying to get involved with community and artists however I could. And I ended up meeting a good friend of mine, Miguel Ayuso, in South Slope. He opened up a gallery space called La Bodega Gallery, and we sort of met, we hit it off, and I became the gallery director there. I sort of just stumbled into that,
Nice.
and still have this wonderful friendship from that. And from there, that led to Arts Gowanus, because I was a Gowanus artist, and so I started volunteering at Arts Gowanus and knowing people at Arts Gowanus. And in 2019, I became the program director. They said, you're good at organizing exhibitions. Can you sort of come aboard and help with the programming? I said, sure. And that kind of led me to where I am now, to the executive director. Over the past couple of years, I took over for the executive director. And I also, La Bodega has closed its physical location. It still exists. Miguel still runs La Bodega. He does drawing nights every week in the Dredgers, and he does very community artwork. But after La Bodega, I collaborated with another Gowanus artist, Craig Griffith, and he had a established gallery, and I became the gallery director there. So everything sort of just like serendipitously happens, and I just sort of fall into these things. Nothing's been purposeful, I guess.
Yeah, well, it does seem to me like so much of it, as you're talking about it, is about relationships and is about you vibing with what someone else brings into the room and then vibing with what you bring into the room.
I feel like that's why I love what I get to do in all aspects, because it's just about collaboration. I love working with artists. I love my job, my whole job, in every aspect of my job, whether it's artist, executive director, or gallery director. It's always having conversations and collaborating and finding a wavelength with people where we can let's pull something out of the ether and do something cool.
Right. Why do you want a career as an art director?
I didn't ask for one. It just has sort of happened. I think in planning exhibitions, being a curator, having, really connecting with artists and appreciating what their ideas are, what they're bringing to the table, it just kind of happens naturally. It's a weird career that I didn't think I would be in. I went to grad school and I wanted to be the artist, and and I still am. I still have a very solid practice, but I think a large part of my career is helping to elevate other artists' careers and helping collaborate with them in how to present their work better or get more visibility, because I think that's important to all of the artists in sort of the world. But we have this, in my mind, this weird barometer of success for artists, and I kind of want to change that. We all can't be blue chip artists. We all, everyone's sort of trying to climb this strange ladder, and the real work, the real fun happens in sort of smaller communities, smaller groups, and that's sort of my focus. Is like, how do artists become successful without joining this weird hierarchy that already exists? And it's kind of like a very classist, terrible, the art world's not my favorite place sometimes. How do we do that locally, and how do we all support each other to sort of build careers that way?
Yeah, and it seems like you bring a kind of structural awareness to it.
Yes.
That informs your ability to look at your own work and to look at others' works and think about how to not just be working on the specifics of the project, but the structure itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist, so I know, I know why I don't like some of the aspects of the art world. I don't really want to be the same thing that we've always done before. Right. And I approach everything as an artist first, like, how would I want this to be? How would I want, at my gallery, we give solo shows, and we treat it more as an artist incubator. We want to have the shows that the artist wants to have. We try to facilitate for the artist, because it's more important to me as a director, as an art director, and as an artist to sort of give the most honest perspective of what an artist is already trying to do, and sort of reevaluating what that means and how to go about that has sort of, and it's never perfect, but that's sort of my mission and my goal.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. Because if you're going to be...
It's fun, but hard work.
And surely an artist's job is in part to take that ability to see that just because something has been done in a certain way doesn't mean that is the way to do it.
Totally, 100%.
All right, let's move on to thinking about some of the specific projects you've worked on. I'd love to ask you to talk about what you think is the most or one of the most creative projects you've ever worked on.
I get to do so much cool stuff. I'm a very lucky person that I get to do. So I have so many favorites, but I think COVID presented certain challenges as an art organization, as a gallerist, as an artist. It presents these real problems, and how do we sort of think outside the box to solve them? So the project that I'm really proud of that we did in May was We're Still Here, and that was a project where it was a portraiture project where anyone in Brooklyn, not just Gowanus, but anyone in Brooklyn could submit, and it was about sort of the last year of COVID. It was like, it was in May, so it was a little over a year, but what was COVID like for you? I expressed that through portraiture. And so what we did is we printed, there's about 130 artists, and we printed these banners that had a portrait and a description of what was on the portrait, and we hung those publicly so they could be enjoyed by anyone walking around publicly. And that was in collaboration with the Old Stone House, and we did that at Washington Park. And that was such a poignant moment for me, because it was like it brought together so many aspects of our community that very very well-known artists and children, and they all had some really great things to say. It was, there's funny portraits, there was really sad portraits, there was tributes, people who died. I mean, it was like, it was a heavy, but it was like probably, when I think about the thing that's made me happiest, it was such a great community builder, and it brought everyone together, and everyone was so like, it was like kind of a healing, a collective, everyone's just like, we all were kind of doing this together, and we're all sort of this community that's coming back together and seeing how this last year and a half was of our life.
Yeah.
So that one I'm really proud of.
That's really powerful.
Yeah,
it's like,
it was.
Again, like the power of art, not just to like sell work or make money or be a status symbol, but to actually heal, to actually bring people together.
Yeah, I mean, there was tributes of people who had passed away, and like really wonderful tributes of a few Gowanus people who had passed away, and people who don't usually get visibility, who like don't usually get in art shows and don't feel like the art world's for them, that all were part of this. And it was really special for me, and it showed me the power of what like community art can actually do for a community, and it was great.
Yeah. What excites you the most about being an art director?
It's great. I mean, I work probably 70 or 80 hours a week, and it doesn't feel like work. All of my friends are artists. Everything I do revolves around some sort of community art thing, some artists. Like, there's always doing work that doesn't always feel like work. It's a lot of, there is a lot of work involved in it, but what gets me up in the morning is like, what's the next project? What are we talking about next? I feel like as long as I'm like I just need to like keep going. I'm like a shark.
Speaking of Arts Gowanus, tell us what's new for this year. What's going on?
So we are doing open studios this year. We went back and forth about whether it's safe. Last year we pivoted and we did Atlantic Avenue Art Walk, where we put art behind the glass of empty storefronts and businesses, put art up. But this year, we've been doing open studios for 23 years. And we wanted to bring it back, and we feel like we can do it safely. So that's the big news. We're back this year, and it's it's the most amazing chance for the public to come in and see what this amazing creative community does behind closed doors. I get to see it a lot as like a curator and as an art director, but the public doesn't always get that experience, and that's what makes, you know, like, you want to see the magic in Gowanus, come to Gowanus Open Studios, because that is going to be, you know, and it always is such a fun experience as businesses open their doors, all the artists open their doors, and it really brings a ton of public out. We have a ton of people who don't usually interact with artists and, you know, get to come out and ask questions and see the process. That's happening October 16th and 17th this year.
Fantastic. And I love that about a glimpse into process, not just product, right? Because that's another way in which the arts get kind of commodified. And
like usually you're seeing a commercial setting, and you know there's art on the walls, but you don't get to see how things are made, and you don't get to smell the smells, and you know, I love process, and I you know, being an artist and also a curator, I love to see what people are doing, how they get to where that end game, you know, how does the finished piece get made? I love that.
Yeah, well,
Open Studio is a great place to find that, you know, to get that sort of little glimpse inside the artist's sort of practice.
Right. And all of this drive that you're sharing with us, all of this inspiration, is clearly something that has helped you shape this institution and this program that's like really special in the neighborhood.
It's very special to the neighborhood. And you know, a lot of people have come before me and sort of, I think this started, just a small group of artists started, you know, let's just open our studios. And it's grown to this really big community event where, you know, it's become one of the, I mean, it's the tentpole of my year. It always is, and it's a tentpole of a lot of the artists because so much visibility happens that weekend. And that's the most important thing for, you know, artists, but also the neighborhood to like, you know, like Gowanus is, you know, my favorite neighborhood ever. And we need, you know, it's like people need to understand how special we are, but how fragile that, you know, artists are very important to what we do here. Like the creativity, what's Gowanus is super important.
Yeah. Speaking of Gowanus, what is the attraction of Gowanus for you, and do you have any hopes for the future of this place?
You know, the creative community, the cool businesses, those really, you know, that this was always the kind of Brooklyn I wanted to live in my whole life. You know, I remember when I was a kid and I lived in Africa, I'd come to Brooklyn because my grandparents were here, and I was like, oh, Brooklyn's awesome. But when I would think about Brooklyn and being an artist, I thought, you know, I had this like very picturesque, and I'm kind of living it. Like Gowanus is the place where the creative community really thrives. And so my goal as an artist, as the executive director of Arts Gowanus, is keep Gowanus creative. I mean, it has to be, I mean, we're kind of at a crossroads in Gowanus with rezoning and everything. And so my job as the ED of Arts Gowanus is, you know, how do we maintain our creative footprint here, and how do we make it sustainable and equitable? And that's a really, you know, as artists get priced out, and you know, it's like the same song you always hear in New York of, you know, people move in, artists get priced out. We're actively trying to combat that any way we can, and I think visibility is a huge part of that, like showing the neighborhood, this is who's here, this is what we could lose, you know, if we're not very careful. The community needs to support the artists. Everyone needs to make sure that we stay as creative as the community as possible.
Yeah.
And that serves the small businesses, that serves this whole economy, which is Gowanus, like supporting the creative community. I can't stress it enough. Like that's my whole life's mission right now.
Yeah. Well, Johnny, it is really, really cool to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us here at the Gowanus Mirror. And I think that's a beautiful note to end on.
Thank you.
Keep Gowanus creative.
And thank you for having me. This was amazing. It was great talking to you. And thank you, Gowanus Mirror. This was really cool.
Cheers.